Welcome to another edition of the Magnolia Masters Pro Camp 2024. So this is going to be the swim analysis for pro triathlete Anna Strehlow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it play, and you guys get to watch the videos kind of without me talking over it, and take a look, and then we'll come back and do the analysis. Okay, so here we are back to the beginning, and what we want to look at is just her overall stroke. What we always start out with, so how does she look in the water? Well, her hips are pretty good. They're close to the surface. Feet are a little bit low. She's got a little bit of that bounce in the stroke, which is usually an indication that you're probably not as connected back to the core from the upper body as you could be. Or that you're letting pressure go somewhere in the hand through the stroke. So we'll actually be able to see it in the data, and I'll show you kind of what's going on. Here you can see, left arm is really getting a good dig on the water. You can see that right there. So she's set up, high elbow catch, is going to pull a big chunk of water back and throw it back towards the wall. So that looks great. You can see with the right, we start out right here in that position. So, immediately we're starting to put more pressure on the water. The elbow's a little low. We go forward, We're still not really pulling yourself forward till right about there. So from there to there, she's losing a little bit on the right side. And again, we'll be able to kind of see this in the data. Head position looks pretty good. She's looking at the kind of bottom of the pool just a little bit forward, so the chin up is up a little bit. Everything looks pretty relaxed, but you can still see that bounce in the stroke. And then you can see kind of how low the hips are. But again, a lot of this is probably the endless pool, the water coming over, pushing down like that. We'll keep on going forward. Okay, so here we can see, what we usually see, which is, we've got a lot of momentum going this way. Here's the feet coming apart. You can see the hips starting to go out, and we'll kind of go forward a little bit more. And then on this side, you can see again, kind of scoops in. So right here, we're throwing it that way. There's midline, so she's right on midline. And then you can see kind of, there's just a lot of movement. She's driving it forward. Looks good. The hips and shoulders are connected together, so that's a good sign that the hip is that the core is engaged and connecting everything together. But yeah, you can see kind of where we get that momentum from. So there we are again, and then that way. And so that would be one of the first things that you're going to want to address is, making sure that everything is just going perfectly straightforward. Here we can see a little bit better image of it right there. So if we figure There's midline. You know, it's kind of going that way, which is just going to create other problems in the stroke. Now, she's a good athlete and she's managed to balance it all out, but yeah, there are, she can definitely be a lot more efficient. Okay, so here we see from the front. So what we'll do is take a look at this right here. So you can see that high elbow. This is probably a little bit too, yeah. So you can see right there, 70%. You know, what we'd want would be the hand down a little bit more. Let's see as we go through here what it looks like. Yeah, it's getting a little closer there. But again, you know, with the angle that we're on the water right here, here's the shoulder. So she's probably giving up a little bit right there because it's outside that where that really good kind of leverage is. Okay, so we had a little technical difficulty there, and we're back. So here on this side, you can see, let's see right there to there, you know, a little bit too kind of open. We'll get another angle on it from the other side. Okay, so here we are from the other side. So we can see right here. Here we go. You know, we're right at about 100 right there. She's pushing through. Let's go forward a little bit. I know there's one where she kind of crosses over the midline. Yeah, so here we are. On the breath, so you can see here's midline, more or less. And you can see that her, you know, her hands really scooping underneath her body right there. So as she rotates back through, so, you know, midline might be like that. You know, back there, you'd probably want to be a little bit wider at that point. So, you know, she's getting really, really close to crossing over on the under part. You know, so she, again, is giving up some power on the water under there. And that's off of the breath. So you can see, you know, we've talked about this before. There's midline there. So the hand is way out here, which is, you know, way, way far away from where all the leverage on the water is. You know, if we say that there's kind of that band that you want to stick in, you know, it's way, way, way far away from that. And a lot of that is just to compensate for that instability that she's putting into the stroke at the top of the stroke. So, you know, here's what we did. It was that position 11 drill that you guys have seen, and you just do it over and over again. So you get a feel for it. You really cue it. It's the importance of cueing on this, what you want the athlete to really be thinking about. So here was the afternoon practice after we did that session. So I think this was probably, you know, it's the very beginning when we were just starting. And, you know, you can see that really hasn't made a huge change, you know, especially when you're tired. It's tough. You know, we've already been through a practice that morning. She had just gotten here. Now, here was the morning after. So you can see it's starting to kind of go out a little bit, starting to get a little bit better. And then here was the first and second sessions where the progress we were able to make. So you can see kind of the difference between these two strokes at this point. You know, the bottom one, so this second one, after she'd been practicing a lot, I had been kind of continually getting on her in practice, trying to remind her to think about it. And you can see that, you know, the bottom one, basically the second session, so towards the end of the camp, she's starting to look a lot more connected. You know, the stroke is really driving forward. The arms look connected to the body. Everything looks a lot more stable. Now, here's the data, and this is something I think you guys need to understand. So the initial data that we got, so this is just a representation. Yellow is, or orange is her left side. Blue is the right. So they were pretty even in terms of the power they were generating, 2.1 versus 2.4. Stroke rate was like, you know, 36. And they look balanced, okay? And, you know, one of the things that happens when you start to change the stroke is that a lot of times it's not going to be this perfect, oh, we just make this little change and everything gets great. No, there's usually, swimming is very, very kind of iterative, and you just have to make these little changes over and over and over again in practices until, you've got something. Now, here's some of the promising stuff that came out. So you can see the left went way up about, basically about 20%, probably 25% increase in force being generated on that side. Now, the right stayed about the same, okay? And we're going to go over why that happened. But, this is the initial. It's not always going to look great when you start making changes. So here was the initial data, this force field that gives you, so she's pretty propulsive. A lot going downward, 2.1, 2.4. So the right on this one is actually a little bit, she's generating a little bit more power on her right than her left. Throwing a lot out to the right, throwing a lot out to the left, and then throwing a little bit out to the right. There's a little bit of hand drag and a little bit of downward, but, really close to where she wants those to be. Because ultimately we're trying to get as much going right there as possible, so that these are just basically these thin lines that go straight back like that. So all the power is just being directed as much as possible straight back. And so here's where we got to with the second one. So you can see right stayed about the same, left took a massive jump up. Now, overall propulsion went down a little bit. She's not throwing as much to the left, she's not throwing as much to the right, and you can see the change here in this left, where more of it's going straight back, okay? And so if we go back, we'll go back there. So that's the difference between the two, okay? Right looks about the same, stayed about the same. She might have lost a little bit, and I'll show you kind of where it showed up. But that's kind of the difference between the two and what you're really going for. And it's not always a straight line to every change you make is going to be this great improvement, because it's going to take her a while to basically incorporate this movement into kind of her movement pattern where it starts to feel really, really efficient. And then, the second thing is the movement pattern she was doing before, she'd been doing that for a very long time. It was very efficient for her. Is it the most efficient way to be? No. And is it the most efficient way she can be? Absolutely not. So what we want to try to do is change it. We'll take a step back a little bit, and then you really are able to take a step forward. And you can already see that in kind of what's going on with the left, the data from the left, where she was able to increase the propulsion by a lot. So here's what it looks like right versus left on the first session. So, this is just from about 10 seconds, I think, through about 25. So, no, about 15 seconds through about 25 seconds. You can see kind of here's where probably that bounce is happening. Anytime you get that little dip, it's probably also in where you get these fall offs right there. But, on this one, the right is generating a little bit more power than the left. Okay. They're pretty even, but you can see the difference between the two. And then when we go to the next one, after we've been working for a while, you can see the difference here. So you can see that, the right's still generating power about what it did before, but the left has come up a lot. Now, we still have kind of this stuff going on, but again, that's going to be stuff that'll work itself out as we go along. And this is part of the reason why you want to start at the top of the stroke. So if there is this crossover in the stroke, you want to be aware of it. You want to change it. You want to, see what happens in the rest of your stroke when you do change it, because it impacts everything that happens behind it. And that's why we really want to focus on it. Okay, so here's kind of a little bit in the difference and why it's happening in that power on the right. So if we look here, she's getting some pretty good power on the right. And she had found a way to kind of try to balance everything out, even though she had that crossover at the front of the stroke. But, when it happens on the right, so if we're looking on the second session, you can just see in general, the right is pulling out a little bit wider, and that's because she feels like she's going a little bit wide. So then the hand tends to track that way. But this is just going to be a little bit of time of getting used to this new movement pattern, giving her brain the opportunity to figure out where it all is. Because you can see right here, as soon as she kind of starts to move this in, it's going to be a much more powerful stroke on this side than it had been. It'll probably catch up to the left. And, when she does that, she's going to be not only generating a lot more power, but then she'll be able to generate a lot more propulsive force kind of driving her forward. So she'll increase the power and then change the direction that force is going, so it's more propulsive than anything else. So, that's some of the stuff that you run into when you're working with athletes and trying to change strokes and make big changes in the stroke. It takes a long time, but you got to know where to start. You just can't pick some random thing off of YouTube and say, hey, I'm going to work on that and hope it changes my stroke. And then if it doesn't work, or, you start to get a little bit slower maybe, then you just abandon it and go to something else. Sometimes you just have to work through these things. You might take a step back to in a few weeks, take a couple of huge steps forward. But it usually takes kind of an experienced coach to be able to tell you, yeah, that's going to work out, and versus, no, we probably need to come at a different direction. So, as always, thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, comment. It really helps out a lot and gets kind of what we're doing out there and allows me to continue to, generate all this free content for you guys to hopefully help you improve your swimming or get a better understanding of it. So, again, thanks for tuning in. Please cheer for Anna this season as she heads into her second year as a pro. And, I hope to see you in the pool soon.